schools as well. So go check them out. It is run by a Gator fan living in Knoxville, Tennessee. So go support him. Again, GameTimeSidekicks.com, promo code Stadium15. And with that, we welcome from the UF Basketball Hour one of my favorite people to talk about college basketball with, simply because he knows and he dissects things that I've never even heard or noticed on a basketball court. Eric Fawcett, my favorite Edmonton resident. What are you guys, Edmontonians? Or
Edmontonians, and you know what? I think I believe you, because I don't know if you could name your second favorite. So I'll take that.
Leon Draisaitl.
Wow. Yeah, current resident. There you go.
Wow. Yeah. So wow.
Look at Dan.
Shout out to me. Who else do I know? Darnell Nurse
Dan
is
over
up
there in South Florida.
Wow. Darnell Nurse is up there. My dad used to work for a company out of Winnipeg, so I'm a little familiar with the provinces up there in Canada. But anyway, Eric, let's talk a little bit about the Gators basketball team. Start the season 6-0, win against FSU last about a week and a half ago. Win over there. But let's talk. How's the UF basketball team looking? On par with what you expected? Some of the transfers, just kind of give us a high level overview of the basketball team so far.
Yeah, I mean, high level overview is this is a team that had a really good chest of NIL and went and got really good players, was able to retain some really good players, and the coaching staff really hit on some of their under the radar recruits. So it's a team that is loaded with talent up and down. But last year's team was talented too, and they just made the NCAA tournament and couldn't win an NCAA tournament game. And I think a lot of the reason why was they were playing a style that was not really the personality of the head coach, Todd Golden. They were a team that was scoring the ball, but could not guard anyone on the other end. And that was not at all the DNA of Golden, not at all how he played at San Francisco. And when you look at the players that they got in the portal this year, they have completely taken on the way that Golden wants his teams to play, the way that his personality is. And that is defending. Like, yes, they're definitely putting up points. You're seeing that. And that's been awesome because the staff wasn't so sure they were going to be particularly good offensively, looking at the team in the offseason. And when you look at the talent they brought in, every single one of them was a defense first guy who was maybe okay offensively, but they were a great defensive player. So you could tell right away the way this team was going to play, and you're seeing that defensive excellence. And so far this season, they're also really filling it up offensively. So they really haven't played a very good team. I mean, you mentioned they crushed Florida State. Like, that rivalry has lost all its juice. Like, Florida's won the last 4. It could be probably the end of Leonard Hamilton's kind of run there. So while it doesn't have the energy that kind of game would usually have, that's probably the best team Florida's played so far, and it's not a great team. So there's a really good chance, even looking at the schedule right now, that they might go into a game with North Carolina in a few weeks undefeated, and that's going to be their biggest test. And you're starting to see national respect. Again, they've been in the AP poll for a number of weeks, which sadly was something they were out of for a long time prior to that. So you're starting to see them get back to national relevance. And they've got one of the best players in the country in Walter Clayton, someone they were able to retain.
Walter Clayton, baby.
Yeah, where's he from?
Clayton, Polk County, man. One time for Walter Clayton and the Polk County boys, man. I'm a big Walter Clayton fan. Is he the biggest addition in transfer portal history with basketball altogether, or just with Golden? What's your opinion on Walter Clayton?
I know there was just some laughs there, but when you look at the best players in college basketball over the last, even again, 5 years since the portal really started cooking, really still the best players in college basketball are guys that were 5-star recruits that were one and done or 2 and through NBA players. So they were still largely the guys that were recruited and played at the school that they recruited at. When you actually look at the production of the best transfer players ever, like, Walter Clayton's in that discussion, like, just looking at production. Again, at some point, like, Florida's going to need to win an NCAA tournament game. Like, if they lose in the first round again and the Gators have 0 NCAA tournament wins with Walter Clayton, then, I think it's going to be somewhat of a, you're not going to be able to say, well, that's the best, one of the best transfers ever. But right now he's producing like one of the best transfers ever. And if Florida's able to actually go on a run here, which they couldn't do last year, it seems crazy, but he's actually, when you look at a lot of the players that were top players in the transfer portal, I mean, Kansas State's got one right now that they spent over $2 million for, which is a ton for a basketball player, and he's scoring single digits. And Walter Clayton's been doubling that up for a year and a half now. So Walter Clayton has been the home run of all home runs when it comes to transfer portal players, and now they just need to keep building things around him and make sure they can actually make some noise in March.
I know Darren Ravel's got the tweet queued up. How many dollars per points that guy is making in the portal?
Eric, I've got a question. I talked to Todd Golden this offseason when we spoke to the Sarasota Gator Club, and we talked a little off the record, so I want to try to not say it, but he was talking about going into this season that the coaching staff was going to be able to focus their energies maybe a little bit more because a certain player wasn't on the team anymore. He said from a talent perspective, and obviously they're kind of showing that maybe they're a little bit better offensively. He said maybe from a talent perspective, we're not going to be as good, but from a cohesiveness and a gelling of the team, we should be a lot better. Is that something that, again, I watch the games, I see us score points. I'm like, hell yeah, points, but I don't totally know about the cohesiveness of the offense and everything else when it comes to breaking down plays and everything else like you do. Is that something that you're seeing as well?
Yeah. I mean, when you look at last year, it kind of seemed like Florida had NIL to burn. And when a player got on the market, if they were the best guy in the market, Florida said, well, we better go get that guy because we can. So they really got one of the best point guards in the portal, and that was Zion Pullen. They got one of the best shooting guards. That was Walter Clayton. Then they got the best power forward available, and it was Tyree Samuel. And all of those three players played really well. And still, it was kind of a frustrating season for the Gators who couldn't win an NCAA tournament game. So you could tell that didn't really fit. And again, all three of those players are guys that are much better offensively than they are defensively. And again, does that match how Todd Golden wants to play? Absolutely not. So then you look at this year, there is a clear number one. It is Walter Clayton. He's your gunner. He's the guy who can score with the best of them in college basketball. And then when you look at the additions they made around him, it was Elijah Martin from Florida Atlantic, one of the best backcourt defenders in the country, took Florida Atlantic to that Final Four. So they took him and said, okay, great. We have someone every single night. Elijah Martin can guard the other team's best guard. Walter Clayton can go chill off the ball, work on the other side. Yeah. They went and got Sam Alexis from Chattanooga, a guy who was not a great offensive player, limited game, but versatile, can play the five, can play the four, can switch on to guards and be mobile. Not a super, explosive offensive talent. That's why he wasn't on a lot of lists for top players in the portal, but exactly what you need. Then they got Ruben Chinyelu from Washington State, someone with, quite frankly, zero offensive game if it's not catching a lob. But man, he can block shots and is outrageously long with a 7'5" wingspan. So again, it's just when you've got that one key player like at the center of your roster and you can start to build pieces around it. That's where I think great college basketball teams are made. I think when you look at last year, they again, like the guys I just mentioned, like they were loaded with talent, but the sum was worth much less than their parts. And that is absolutely what you don't want as a coach. It's absolutely not what you want as a fan. And again, while this team is less talented, I don't think anyone could look at this roster and make an argument that they're more talented than the year prior, which could scare people because again, they didn't win an NCAA tournament game. But when the pieces fit so much better, that's something that I think, and you're seeing early where the Gators are just crushing everyone. That's where I think really good college basketball teams are made.
A lot of teams, well, let me ask this one first. Todd, we go back to Mike White and we knew what he wanted to do, and he never really got the pieces in recruiting to do what he wanted to do. They just never got the guys to run what he wanted to run, specifically offensively. They would hustle and play defense, but offensively they never got it. Are we getting closer to a roster? Like, has Todd gotten through the portal and through high school? Has he gotten a roster that are we seeing, hey, this is what Todd Golden's offense, what his team is supposed to look like?
I think so. And that's why I do think there should be huge expectations this year. Again, they had a huge amount of NIL and you saw the results of that. They got the players, they handpicked everyone they wanted last year and didn't reach their ceiling. They were a chance. Absolutely. And this year, again, doing the same thing. Like they were able to get the players that they wanted and needed. So it's one of those things that if they don't make noise this year, then you've got to say like, well, what do you want? Like Walter Clayton's one of the best players in the country and you were able, and you knew he was coming back. So you surrounded them with the exact pieces you thought would support that. Like we just talked about. So I definitely think we're seeing the exact kind of team he wants to assemble. And at this point, there's obviously places you could improve. I wish they had that big kind of NBA 6'7" wing that could really guard on the other team's best wing and provide some length there. They're kind of a team of post players and guards with not a lot of wings at the middle. So you could still improve places. But kind of functionally speaking, I think this is exactly how they want to play, with a team that plays two bigs all the time. That's always been a Todd Golden thing. They want to control the glass. They want to be able to play really fast. That's absolutely what they've been doing. They have the guards to really push. And last year, the shooting wasn't great. Elijah Martin really improved that, bringing it in, had his 8 3-pointers the other day, which showcased that. I think Golden's got he's got the weapons he needs. It's just a matter of putting everything together. And so far, against not great competition, it looks like it's working, and there's certainly going to be a lot of confidence going into the SEC.
Yeah, they're making teams that they supposed to dominate. They are dominating those teams. And I had the same takes just hearing you talk about it. I was like, yeah, like the wing guys is missing a little bit. Like, we're good guard, big men, but the forward position is a little suspect. 3-point shooting looks on point, like rebounding, everything looks on point. What would you say the weakness of our team, what we should improve before a big North Carolina matchup or a team like that?
So right now you're seeing the Gators just absolutely bludgeon people on the offensive glass, which kind of covers up a lot of their half court offense that's not always great. It's much improved from last year, where I was, somewhat of a vocal critic, or people who have read my work will know that I did not think the half court offense was very good. And that's kind of why they lost a lot of close games and lost a close NCAA tournament game, is because when the game was a track meet and they were running up and down, they were awesome. When they threw a brick at the backboard, they had the 7-footers to go get the ball. And that'll get you so far. That's really good for dominating in the regular season. But to reach to reach a high ceiling in basketball, in college basketball, like, the game is going to slow in big games in March. It's going to slow in the SEC tournament. It's going to slow in the NCAA tournament. And you need to be able to execute at a really high level when the game really slows down. And again, just to this point, they haven't really had the opportunity to need to show that. So I say it's a question mark because it was a major question mark from last year. And again, it just, playing, a good Southern Illinois team, a good South Florida team, like that's great. But these games have been, they've dominated with their offensive rebounding. They've dominated with their pace. You're not going to be able to dominate Alabama and Auburn and Kentucky that way. I mean, maybe you can, I guess we'll see, but you're probably going to need to get into a half court game and try to out execute them. So it's still a little bit of a lingering question mark from last year. And this is where you kind of hope that these pieces that fit a little bit better. And now that hey, Walter Clayton's your guy. That's the guy you want with the ball in these big moments. So again, what do you have schematically around to support that, so that you win and lose games in the hands of your best players and not your third or fourth guy?
This might be a bad question. Wouldn't be my first bad question. Obviously Micah not available this year. How much better could he have made the team? I know, like you said, you mentioned they want to have multiple big guys and control the glass.
Obviously, depth is not even a really big issue for the Gators this year in the front court. When you really look at what Micah Handlock did, I know he's a fan favorite, and this is going to sound like I'm a little down on it, but he was someone able to he was able to play a lot of really soft minutes. He played always with the starters at the start of the first half, always with the starters at the start of the second half, and then he was almost never on the floor in crunch time. So he was able to get those 5 or 6 offensive rebounds against lesser competition, and he was able to finish some dunks when Zion Pullen would make something happen in Spoonfield. So and again, he was a player that last year was just his sophomore season, and he came from Marshall in a year when the Sun Belt was really bad, and he was playing against 6'7" centers all the time. So I think what really hurts, I feel much worse for him at an opportunity where his development was going to be huge in his third year of college basketball, his second year in the SEC with the Gators. My heart hurts for him. I don't think, oh man, the Gators would have, be such a higher ceiling if they had Micah Handlocked in. So, and that's also why I think that you can tell that it's amazing, modern medicine, man, he's already dunking basketballs and playing against contact and in practice. They've said he won't be playing this year. So but I'm sure if people saw some of those clips, if they didn't come out and say he's not going to play, people would have thought, man, he could probably come out there and compete. And because they have a lot of good players in the front court, I think that's also why they're like, hey, let's just like not risk anything, take this year and come back full strength next year. And but I mean, it's also worth noting no one in Florida's front court is going to run out of eligibility after this year. So it's going to be a loaded group. But like as the Gators have been crushing teams this year so far, there hasn't been any part of me that's like, oh man, but like they just need Micah Hanlockton out there. We'll see how things go. But yeah, we were still at the kind of start of his development, and I don't think he's someone who is someone I would have projected to be on the floor in Florida's biggest games this season if he was healthy. I guess we won't know, but we'll see next year. Because hey, if he's already doing the stuff he's doing in workouts and you know throwing down 360 dunks, like I'm hoping that means he's somewhat close to 100% for next fall.
Nice. Eric, I know there's a lot of questions about him. I know that Todd Golden kind of said it's a wait and see, may happen, may never happen. But Olivier Rioux, the 7'9" guy from IMG Academy that joined the program, obviously, you know, a lot of people see him be like, wow, like he could be a guy that could make an impact one day. But do you ever anticipate
Canadian,
him?
right?
Canadian,
playing?
yeah.
Canadian.
French Canadian, right?
Yeah, French Canadian.
Do you ever anticipate him playing? Like we were having this conversation over dinner with my parents. I was like, I just don't know if I ever see it. And they're like, well, why did they offer him? Like, well, he was also like 4 inches shorter when he signed his letter of intent than when he showed up on campus. So, but
I think
you ever
he was 7'3" or something like that, and now he's 7'9".
Wow. Yeah, and again, like he's a preferred walk-on, so that tells you maybe something right there about you know the level of I guess risk or what kind of spot he's occupying. It's not a scholarship spot. Again, basketball is going to go from 13 to 15 next year, so like maybe he gets a scholarship just because it's you know use it or lose it essentially. Man, that archetype just has not worked at the and again of like. He's 7'9", so that's kind of a new level. But when you look at those like 7'4", 7'5" guys, like a lot of them start at mid-major schools because no one really believes in it, and then they transfer to the SEC or high major schools, and then everyone sees they're not good enough, and then they end up back in mid-major schools. You see that all over. There was a player named Connor Vanover who played for 3 SEC teams, and every single one of them was like, "Yeah, he's not good enough for our level." But people, you know. Every coach sees a player that's 7'4", 7'5", and says, "Oh well, like I know he didn't work there, but like when I coach him, I'll be able to, you know, I'll figure it out." And they just never do. And the thing about Olivier Rioux is, and again, these are usually the guys that are like I'm talking about the guys that are 7'4", 7'5". Like he's 7'9". Like it's uncharted.
There's extra 5 inches, Eric.
And
huge difference.
And you could see like even when he was like in practices with the Gators, like. He was going up and down once, and then he was taking multiple minute breaks. Like just the conditioning at that level is not there, you know, trying to, you know, be mobile enough to play the way he would need to get on the floor. It's also one of those things like Todd Golden has never been someone like he's never played zone in his entire coaching career. If you've got a 7'9" guy, you're probably playing zone. So like, do you want to change your entire philosophy to put this somewhat novelty of a player on the floor? I don't really think so. So, hey, it'll be a cool story. And like, if you have the ability to bring in a preferred walk-on, like give me the guy who's 7'9" versus the guy who's 5'7", and like, we'll see down the line, but no, I am not anticipating him being a contributor, but man, like the Rowdies are going to go crazy when he gets on the floor at the end of a blow.
Yeah, that'll be sick when we play Tennessee or Kentucky and he gets a chance to play against Kentucky because we won by 30. Eric, right now looking at some of these projections, bracketology, those kind of things, Florida is most likely, I guess statistically, according to what was I looking at? Teamrankings.com, which I guess amalgamates all of these together, like a 5 seed. Does that sound about right for you?
It's just so hard right now. Where again, like I said, the Gators haven't played the
we
meat
don't
of their
do that on
non-conference.
this show, Eric.
Okay, like I mean,
one seater bus, Eric.
Yeah,
one seater bus.
We don't prognosticate on the future and injuries and what is this team going to look like. We put it out now so that I can call you out in a few months, like I did Corey about his Lane Kiffin takes. You know, say, Eric, you said we were going to be a 5 seed, but here we are as the 2 seed. You know what I mean?
So I'll give you two then. I'll give you my preseason where I said I thought the Gators were the 32nd best team in the country. So that would have been like a,
An
you know,
8 seed.
someone like an 8 seed. And then I think when you're looking, if you were to ask me today, where they are definitely playing much better than I expected, even though they haven't played a lot of great competition, I think they absolutely look like a 5 seed. And I would also say if you look at their NIL budget and their talent, they should absolutely be a 5 seed. And probably better than that. So that absolutely should be the expectations, and we'll see exactly what happens. And again, in a sport that's so reliant on a one and done tournament for framing how successful or not a season was, well, we'll see exactly what that gets. But yeah, the talent on the roster is tremendous. The pieces theoretically fit quite well, and they're showing they have so far. So I know it's tough for a site like Team Rankings to kind of do any level of actual bracketology where there's really maze to work with, but in terms of all the metrics that have been evaluating teams so far, the Gators would be a top 20 team absolutely by anything that's kind of established what's happened on the floor so far to start the season. And yeah, I think that's absolutely a fair expectation. And if you get up to that 4 seed, you start to get the really good kind of regional spots where you hope to even maybe get a game that's close to Florida in the NCAA tournament. So that's got to be a goal.
I've got one final question. They are 197th in the country in assists per field goals made. Is that just the kind of offense that they are? A lot of putback shots, that kind of stuff? Or is that just a metric that is, you can have hundreds of a percentage points difference between 197 and like 52?
No, you nailed the big one. They're 12th in the country in offensive rebounds, and a lot of those are being put right back up for layups. So obviously those are not going to be assisted. And then you've also got a really good isolation score in Walter Clayton. And he's, when he's cooking guys one-on-one, you're obviously not going to get the assist. So that is a stat that I think you can look at and sometimes kind of diagnose how an offense is looking a little bit, but Florida is just such an outlier with the way that they offensive rebound, and such an outlier in having an isolation player as good as Walter Clayton. So, hey, if the offense starts to really stall, I think you can point to that and say like, oh, maybe this was, you had the inside track, you were the canary in the coal mine, and that was the stat. But I think it can kind of be looked at by the offensive rebounding.
Gotcha.
Just cooking with that line there. You were the canary in the coal mine. Ooh.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's why you get paid to write, Dan.
Yeah, no, hell yeah. Last thing, 3-point percentage, 218th in the country. Is that just because they jack up a lot of threes?
Yeah, they're 77th in the country in 3-point attempts. And again, we could get into the math discussion of like why them shooting, their percentage right now is lower at 31.6, but it's, that's if they get up to 33 or 34, which is going to be still probably in the 160 or 170th, but they stay at like 70th in the country in attempts. That's probably something they'd be happy with. And then the other thing too, is again, if you're going to be the 12th best offensive rebounding team in the country, which last year they were 8th, you just want to put up those long shots that make for crazy rebounds and give yourself second chance opportunities. So the Gators are also going to live with a high volume, like that high volume of 3-point attempts is again works totally well for how the roster is built. And again, that's something where the team could say, we've got Walter Clayton, we're bringing in Elijah Martin, who shot a ton of threes throughout his career at Florida Atlantic. Let's make sure we've got some offensive rebounders. And that was Sam Alexis and Ruben Chinelu. So that kind of goes into, I think, the whole kind of roster building where they can absorb some of those not great shooting nights, but they certainly are going to want to be higher than in the 200s. That's for sure.
Elijah Martin, shout out to the Owls.
Shout out. All right, Eric. Well, we're going to let you run. Thanks so much for joining the show. Let everybody know where they can follow you and listen to your podcast. It's great stuff.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, guys. All my Florida writing is going to be at Gator Country. I also have Florida Basketball Hour podcast if you want some more basketball conversation there. And the Twitter has really evolved. It's not too much Florida content there now, but if you do love just basketball and college basketball on the whole, Eric Fawcett _ is where you can find a lot of really nerdy coaching stuff.
It has taught me stuff, the way you break down plays, and it could be a Division II game in Portland, Oregon, and Eric is breaking down cool offensive sets and some defense as well. Definitely nerdy though. Definitely taking you to school in the classroom.
It's not for the casuals, but yeah, that's kind of the new market of things I've been getting into. Alongside writing about Florida basketball, I do coach professional basketball here in Canada. I do consulting all across college basketball. So that is where the Twitter has gone a little bit, but yeah, believe me, the Florida stuff is still flowing at Florida Basketball Hour and Gator Country.
This has been a red bottom show, it's been a show at bottom. What type of drip you got behind them? Bowling shoes? What you got back there, bro?
Oh man,
Nikes. I see some Nikes.
Well, yeah, we got my wedding shoes here. So we got these.
Okay,
these would be the nicest ones.
How dare you said bowling. You said bowling shoes. And he pulled out the Kobe's.
You mentioned Darnell Nurse. Here's Darnell Nurse shoes. Darnell Nurse. The Oilers just had their locker room sale, and Darnell Nurse also wears a 12. So got some Darnell Nurse shoes.
Some
regular these are the bowling shoes, which is the Edmonton Stingers official coaching shoe, gum bottom.
Yeah.
But again, had to move some stuff around the office. So
that's what he has to wear when he's coaching professional basketball.
But yeah, I'm sure that was great podcast content for everyone that's listening and not tuning in. But
it's not red bottoms like Nick.
People watching on YouTube.
Eric, man, we'll Nick, you gonna keep going?
No, I'm good.
Okay, very good. I appreciate you coming back on, Eric. We'll talk to you maybe as we get a little closer to the SEC schedule kicking off here, man. But we appreciate your time, effort, and energy.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. Take care.
Talk to you, brother.